Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And welcome back to News and Views right here on Salam Media. We're talking to the African Diaspora Global Network chairperson, Dr. Vusi Sibanda. Dr. Vusi, welcome to the show. Good morning.
Good morning, Zaira, and good morning to your listeners. And thank you very much for inviting me.
Dr. Vusi, it's a pleasure to have you here. We talk very often about protection of children, and I know there's been a prevalence of children and teenagers being transported across the border without proper documentation. We've heard it over the news. Many people speaking is that, especially over the coming Easter weekend, there is a big concern of children coming through without adequate documentation. Please take us through this.
Well, look, we know that South Africa, for example, hosts a lot of, migrants from neighboring countries. And during the Easter weekend, a lot of people, want to spend time with their families. And for that reason, parents tend to organize, with these transporters, some of them, not ordinarily, proper transporting companies, and some of them as big as, bus companies, and they transport these children without proper documentation. And this, basically looks at across the board teenagers, children much younger than teenagers, toddlers and so forth. And unfortunately, this puts the lives of these children in danger, which makes it a responsibility for each and every person to make sure that the rights of children are not violated. Because we've got parents that are therefore violating the rights of these children when they transport them without, documentation, because they put them in harm's way, considering that they can easily be traded. That's where human trafficking starts, and they cannot report this to anyone because they are the ones that put the children under such circumstances, and some can actually be molested and abused. And this is why, there is such a concern. We've also seen, Department of Social Development, saying they want to, up their revs in terms of measures to prevent this, and are engaging even neighboring countries, which we really appreciate.
Dr. Vusi, I know that we are seeing an increase in human trafficking and how many children across not just South Africa, but across Africa are becoming far more vulnerable, especially in situations like this. Like you're saying, there's no way of reporting it because there's no documentation in place. Children have been moved illegally. So while parents may think that they're doing this just for ease of their family, it actually violates a number of principles and a number of protection to be able to look after their kids. But is there any accountability on the part of the bus companies? Are they taking any accountability for this? Because if you are transporting children and knowing full well that they're getting onto that bus without proper documentation, are you then not complicit in the crime as well? Sorry, Dr. Busi, I think you are muted. We're just trying to. There we go.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, you were saying?
Saying, look, I mean, I don't think they're only complicit, but I think they're actually perpetuators. Because, look, bus companies, for starters, they're fully aware, all carriers are aware that if they're transporting any person across the borders or, frontiers, they must be properly documented. And to make matters worse, coming into South Africa, South African law, requires certain documents for children traveling alone, unaccompanied, or by one parent. So all those regulations are basically violated. It's unfortunate that we have not seen maybe the most stringent fines imposed on these transporting companies, by the Department of Home Affairs and the law, because this would really inhibit, this behavior. Because you cannot take, children, as young as 5, 8, like what we saw in December 9, even young teenagers, across the border without proper documentation. Because one, nobody is supposed to go into any other country without a traveling document.
So, what are the steps currently in place or being taken to ensure that these children are protected, or that there are countermeasures in place to ensure that this is reduced so that there's some level of protection?
Well, look, ordinarily, we know that a company that is found, transporting, people without documentation or a career, they are fined, a certain amount, as a company. And then those drivers also are prosecuted in terms of aiding people, because there is, Section 49 of the Immigration Act and Section 40, I think, that talks about aiding people, to cross borders or to travel without documentation, entering or leaving the country when they're not properly documented. So I think that is the first level of protection that is there. But there's very little, I think, going forward, because in the first place, parents are the ones that allow this. So when these children are taken, I think parents should be taken into account, because what that means is that the parent have initiated, these trips. And parents are not being responsible because they are putting their own children in harm's way. So it is our view that there must be laws that are actually compelling, that are going to target parents whose children are going to be found, in these, careers, so that the children cannot be reunited with them. Maybe they should be given some form of a sanction in order to ensure that this should not happen. Of course, we know that the courts have always been, quite handy and speedy in dealing with such cases because they are the upper guardian of the children. But I think that that should not just be enough, because if you remember, the story about last year's 400-something children, we had the government of Zimbabwe being in denial and saying that did not happen. That was a publicity stunt. And we don't know of any parent that has been held to account or heard of any after that. It just, came when they were stopped and nothing further. So a lot still needs to be done in that area.
And now with Easter weekend coming up, I know that strong measures are being put into place at various border points, ensuring that exactly this, that children are entering in with proper documentation. Do you think this is going to be sufficient for this weekend?
Well, I don't think it is sufficient because, look, it's something that we've only started, hearing, it being spoken about, just this week. Ordinarily, there should be an ongoing campaign to make sure that parents are conscientized. They are aware. They just think, look, I'm working in South Africa. I just want to be reunited with my family. I probably cannot travel because the parents don't have, maybe documents themselves. So it will be more difficult for me to travel. I'll even lose my job. So it's better for the children to travel. But then, why is it so difficult to get the children to have proper traveling documents? Because they're just coming in for a visit. They will not be disallowed into entering South Africa. It's not something that difficult. So I think this kind of a campaign needs to be ongoing, on television, print media, on radio, everywhere else, so that, parents are aware that they need to make sure that when children travel, they travel with documentation. So I just think that the time is a little too short. It should have been done, a long time ago.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Vusi. We're going to be taking a very quick ad break and then continuing with our conversation with Dr. Vusi Sibanda.
Salam Media, your spiritual companion this Ramadan.
Are you looking for a cross-border road transport company that is committed in achieving high safety standards, who is fast and efficient, and also excellent customer service? Gardi Global specializes in cross-border transport from South Africa to Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Malawi. Gardi Global, situated at 10 Daniel Road, Benrose, Johannesburg. For inquiries, contact our trained staff on 011 614 3108 or email info@gardiglobal.co.za. Safe long haul into Africa is our business. Gardi Global Transport.
Abu Hurairah narrated that he heard the Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, say, "In black seed there is a healing for every disease except death." This Ramadan, experience the health benefits of this ancient blessed seed by using the Tib Black Seed range. Black seed assists the body to boost immunity, regulate blood sugar levels, reduce inflammation, and act as a potent antioxidant. Experience a holistic approach to health by introducing the Tib Black Seed range into your Ramadan routine. Available in capsules, pure cold-pressed oil, and a vapor rub. Trust Tib Health Sciences for quality black seed products. For more information, visit blackseed.co.za. Available at leading pharmacies.
Southern Africa Dawah Network is a non-profit organization striving to uplift the disadvantaged and empowering through education and dawah. Donate to the SADN centers, the M.A. Motala Islamic Center, as well as our Islamic centers in Amoti, Imtalumi, Botshabelo, and Castile. Donate your zakat and lillah today. Contact Farooq Sheikh 076-321-0650, Yusuf Mohammadi 072-259-3457, or the SADN Head Office 031-304-8000. Our account, Standard Bank, account number 050-856-294 for your zakat, or 050-879-790 for your lillah. Dawah through education, education through dawah, the Southern Africa Dawah Network.
Alhamdulillah. Muslims in South Africa finally have access to a fully Sharia-compliant emergency medical takaful and wellness product. As an industry first, Emergifac Sharia offers up to 575,000 Rand emergency medical cover at a private hospital for you and your family. Plus, you receive 24-hour access to private ambulance evacuation, 24-hour armed response services, roadside home, and even appliance assistance services. Emergivac Sharia offers you and your family priceless emergency medical cover at a fraction of the cost of traditional private healthcare. Simply download the Emergivac app and register online or SMS Sharia to 40777. Emergivac Sharia, for when serious emergencies require seriously fast response.
World-class financial services only at Sapphire Global, your financial partner. If you are looking for Islamic, Sharia, and ethical financial products, look no further. Sapphire Global offers a wide range of financial service offerings from short-term to life and investments. A full-service center with all financial requirements under one brand. Our highly skilled and experienced consultants are ready to help protect your financial future. Contact us on 041 001 0184 or visit our website on www.sapphireglobalfs.com. Sapphire Global is an authorized financial services provider.
You are listening to Salam Media live from our headquarters in South Africa. This is Salam Media, keeping you company this Ramadan.
You are listening to Zahira Bam Ismail. This is Salam Media.
Everything is possible.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the show. We are chatting to Dr. Vusi Sibanda from the African Diaspora Global Network, the chairperson of this organization. Dr. Vusi, earlier we were talking about the number of children and teenagers that are being transported across the borders without any proper documentation. But as you rightfully mentioned, for many who are working in South Africa, who may also be on permits, who may not necessarily be in the country legally, for them, they may be thinking it's a lot easier to just bring my children across for 1.5 to 2,000 Rand instead of paying the 4,000 Rand for the passport or for the documentation. Perhaps, is it a possibility because finances are the first issue? Secondly, perhaps many may not even know what is needed. It just makes more sense and easier for them to bring their children across than for them to risk their jobs and worry about how they're moving across as well. What information or access to information is being given to parents so that they're able to understand the repercussions of what they're doing?
Well, unfortunately, I think that's where the problem is, because that information is not really made, available to a lot of parents, especially those that might not be regularized, they are stay regularized in the country because they don't have documentation. So I think there need to be a campaign as well from quite a number of these embassies and consulate to make sure that people are aware. For example, if you're looking at people that might be taking these trips for about 2,000, 2,500, that will be about a single trip. And, if somebody has got to make, pay that return trip, that costs the same amount of money that would cost them, to get a passport either in Zimbabwe, in DRC, and so forth. So we therefore encourage parents, because they think that because they don't have documents, children are not likely to get those documents, which is not completely true, because children are just going to apply for these passports. And once they've paid for the passports, one, it is the safety of their children. Number two, they will pay much, much less because they're not smuggling children. Number three, they're not violating any laws. And number four, they may not find themselves in trouble with the law. So I think we need to have these campaigns to make sure that, parents are conscientized about the dangers, of actually engaging in this kind of practice.
Absolutely. And we're also seeing in terms of the manner in which children are transported through those borders, it's also not a safe way for children to be coming through. And like we were talking earlier about the accountability that lies with these very bus companies, it's almost as though we're going to wait until something hugely tragic happens before we go back and go, now let's go and sort something out. And now let's do something for these children.
God forbid that, that should really happen, because we are all somehow going to be complicit, because, we've lived with this and we've seen it as something, normal, and very little has been done. Because indeed, we have seen, elderly people, or rather, people that are majors, being transported in containers in these very awkward circumstances. Some have perished, in these, transporting, in these vehicles that they're using, or modes of transport. So we can imagine now if we've got, bodies of little people, littered all over the shore, simply because we have not taken protective and preventative measures in good time, nor have we had a campaign to educate parents in order to make sure that this is prevented, and all stakeholders are involved in making sure that anyone who is found engaging in these exercises are actually prosecuted to the maximum extent of the law.
And I think, as you're saying, we don't need a tragedy to take place for us to be able to say we should have done something more. Dr. Vusi, who are the relevant stakeholders that are involved, that are already at the table trying to fix the situation, and who should be involved that is not yet at the table?
Well, look, we've got governments. I mean, we've got the South African government already on the forefront through the Department of Social Development, working together with the border management agents, I mean, the police. And of course, we've got NGOs like, Save the Child. But we also need, other countries, our neighboring countries that are sending countries like Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Lesotho to be actually, hands-on. And there are different ministries to make sure that, this is prevented. And we need to make sure that even, the parents, are involved in making sure that community-based organizations can actually be more involved in educating these parents, and also that the different various of media are used by the government organizations like the DSD in these particular campaigns to make sure that children are properly protected, because everybody watches TV and listen to radio. So if we've got enough campaigns that are taking place in all these areas, and people are told that, look, it's not just breaking the law, but it is actually violating the rights of children, and these are crimes against humanity, because that's where they should be classed. Maybe people can understand that a lot better.
And I think you're correct in saying, in addition to the campaigns that need to be taking place, we need absolute accountability to be held also for the very many people and companies who are just seeing this as a way for them to make their profits at the end of the month, and especially during holiday season. Dr. Vusi, I think many people may be thinking, you know what, this can't possibly affect me. It's something as simple as bringing my child through and the fear of documentation. But without that, we're also leading to many more xenophobic attacks. We're leading to many more discussions that are taking place, and attacks are happening, and especially on the human trafficking fund. I don't think that people understand the reality or the realness of human trafficking. What are you currently seeing with regards to that, especially with children?
Well, look, this is a very serious problem, and people might not really, be thinking that it's something very serious, and its impact, even on the young minds and the children that end up, also getting, attacked in these crossfires where there's xenophobic attacks and they get involved, to the extent that they might actually think that it's not a good idea to travel, into other countries in the future, and they've got a fear of traveling because they've been exposed, to these circumstances. So I think what we have seen is basically that, as you have said, that we've got an increased trend of children traveling, across many borders in order just to be reunited with their parents for a short space of time. And some of them end up, getting lost, and some of them end up getting molested because they're traveling alone and they don't have adequate documentation. And if in some cases they end up, at the border, they thinking they've got adequate documents, and the officials tell them your documents are not enough and you've got to go back. The transporter leaves them at the border, and now they've got to find, their way back on their own, and that becomes very dangerous, because now it means that all the other kinds of human beings that are involved in human trafficking can come in as if they wanted to help, and we've got people missing. That is why we've got so many young people that are missing, and it's unfortunate that the circumstances through which they go missing would not have been disclosed. But these are some of the circumstances that we actually come across. So there is actually a lot that is taking place, that is unlawful in terms of transporting, children.
And I think that's devastating to listen to think about these young children who have gone missing. And I think as listeners, we need to actually understand that these are young children who still have that feeling of anxiety, who still have those feelings of fear, who still have the feelings of being overwhelmed. And here you're thinking about a young child. Think about your own child standing at a border all alone, being told, now figure your way home, how vulnerable these children are. And I don't think it's right for any child to ever be put into that position. And Dr. Vusi, you rightfully said, we all need to do our bit to be able to ensure that we do as much as we can to protect every single child and to make people aware of the rights of every single child, so that it's never ever taken for granted at any point in time or overlooked in any way possible.
Indeed. Look, I mean, I think what we'll basically notice is that if you look at, children, if we even say it's daunting for children, this task, of crossing a border is scary to the adults. If you've got to go through a border, you've got to think over, oh, goodness me, especially if it's road, because there are queues on end, 5, 6, 7 hours queuing, trying to get assistance. Now, can you imagine a little child who's not, who's unaccompanied by an elder or parent, who's just, in the hands of a transporter, who has got responsibilities, in terms of, making sure that, their vehicle is clear to cross the border and the child is left alone. So there are ordinarily even predators at these border posts that are there looking for people that are stranded so that they can take advantage, and because they are involved in human trafficking. So what we're actually exposing children to is worse than, ordinarily what we think, because the trauma that, sets in these little minds, and the travel. I mean, imagine a trip of about 18 to 24 hours. Somebody's on the road. They've not had a proper, bath. They've not had proper sleep. So it's just very, very, and they are unaccompanied, and they cannot know if they've got to alight at some stage, get food, have a proper break if they're told, because they're scared they might get lost. So it's just one of those things that is not supposed to be, allowed, for children to be exposed to.
Let's hope we actually start getting something right so that we end up protecting the rights of all children around. Dr. Vusi Sibanda, chairperson of the African Diaspora Global Network, thank you so much for joining us here on Salam Media this morning. Always a pleasure to chat to you.
Thank you very much, and good morning.
After that heavy news, I think it's something we all need to become far more aware of, and something we need to actively work on to protect every child around us, and to ensure that the human trafficking networks have less opportunities to be able to get to those who are most vulnerable. Stay tuned. We'll be going for a quick ad break.